Good evening. The first illegal migrants were moved into a former military barracks in the dead of night under police escort. At 3:38 a.m, 28 male illegals were bussed into Crowborough barracks. They're expected to be joined by more than 500 more at some point in the future. It's a leafy town in East Sussex. The locals have been protesting this in big numbers. Even the co-deputy leader of the Green Party, Rachel Milwood, was against it.
Many of you will be aware that the Home Office are planning to temporarily house 600 asylum seekers at the Crowborough Army Camp. Wealdon District Council has objected to this decision because we simply don't have enough information to reassure us that the well-being of asylum seekers and of local communities will be safeguarded effectively, and because the Home Office has completely failed to conduct any of the promised community engagement.
Well, you know, you're against it, are you? Because you think that those doctors and engineers should probably be allowed to work. We need to make sure that their conditions are OK. Yeah, whatever. Locals actually hounded her at an urgent meeting about this barracks.
My second question is actually directly to you, Rachel. It does actually go to you as well, James. You did a video the other day, Rachel, saying that all of these people, you know, doctors and engineers and surgeons that are coming here, and we should give them the right to work. Now, firstly, engineers, doctors and surgeons do not come from France on a dinghy and throw their medical certificate overboard. It's very clear to me that you really don't understand the small boat crisis. So therefore, I'm going to say, why don't you resign, both of you, and make way for someone who understands the crisis?
Green ideology meets reality. The Home Office has pressed ahead anyway, and it's just moved them in. OK, so they're there now. The government just doesn't get it, though, do they? They think that this is a win, and you can see that on the headline there. Quelling public disquiet is worth the extra cost of a barracks asylum housing. Well, they think that people are angry, you know, because with the hotels, just because the hotels. But that's not the point. Brits don't want to be paying for and living with illegal migrants, full stop. We actually booted out army cadets to make way for illegal immigrants. It was reportedly, quote, the most heavily used training camp in the southeast. So we don't know if there are any plans now to relocate cadet training somewhere else. So we are damaging the future of our armed forces at a very dangerous time in global affairs so that we can look after foreign fighting-age males. This comes just a day after Labour decided to press ahead with a law that could be used to prosecute veterans, some in their 70s and 80s, for historic alleged offences. At another military base that's about to be used for illegals, this time up in Scotland, soldiers serving military personnel are worried for the safety of their wives and children because when they're stationed abroad, illegals will be moved in. And they are right to be worried, because today, an asylum seeker from Trinidad, which, by the way, is a very popular holiday destination for many Brits, was jailed for 7 years for raping a woman in Bournemouth. He was actually also a failed asylum seeker, so there you go. Look, I feel sorry for the people of Crowborough. I'm afraid it's yet another British town that has fallen victim to illegal immigration.
This interruption is brought to you by ExpressVPN and their New Year deal. New Year, new VPN, and a huge saving of up to 80% if you act now. You're busy planning how to get in shape, but the hackers are planning how to get into your accounts. ExpressVPN locks down your connection so you can start the year protecting your data. So scan the QR code or click the link in the description now.
Let's get thoughts from my panel. Journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee, Reform UK councillor Russell Quirk, former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Right, Linda, I'll start with you. I mean, you know, remarkable. 3:38 a.m, police escort, dead of night, in the lads go.
Yeah, that's terrible. Every time this happens in the middle of the night, it sends out the most disastrous signal. I know why they do it, because it's such an unpopular move. They've got to do it under cover of darkness. One thing I would say is that I know that the situation in some of the asylum hotels, because Barack Obama told me about this, I won't name who it is, that they have reached such incendiary levels in some parts of the country that they are really, really worried about the explosive nature of the men-only hotels. So they've got to come out of hotels, and until they're all assessed and either allowed to remain or go, they've got to be put somewhere. And I think, in balance, and I'm not saying it's ideal, but they do need to be somewhere where you can put good security in.
Well, I think they're allowed out, though.
Well, no, that's not on.
That's the thing. It is in army barracks, but that is an important point, though. I get what you're saying. You know, I know that it's not ideal. Well, it's horrible, obviously, but I mean, at least if they were fenced in, basically, then that would be one thing. But they're not. They're going to be allowed free rein in the local town.
And I don't understand that, because I, as you know, did a lot of work with women who'd been airlifted out of Kabul when the Taliban came down. They were all in what was called bridging hotels. And honestly, they were like Alcatraz. You could not get in or get out of those hotels
well, the human rights
very easily.
I've got hold of it, probably.
Well, it is a disaster if they're allowed to get out and roam around freely. Disaster.
So this so-called win, as it's being trailed, I mean, effectively, what the government are doing is just moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic.
Yes, that's right.
So, you know, taking illegal migrants, that's what they are, generally economic migrants rather than, asylum seekers from holiday destinations. This is just a headline to make it look as though the government are doing something about it. Not only is there an issue here in terms of the people of these areas. It isn't just Crowborough, by the way. Just up the road from me in Essex is Wethersfield, which started off with 500 illegal migrants in it, then 800, now 1,200. You talk about security, and in my view, these people, if they've entered illegally, should be interned. So they should be in camps that they are not allowed out of, not only so that we can control their movements, because we don't know who they are. Some of them we know are criminals. Some of them we know have had terrorist tendencies. But also that in itself would provide the disincentive. But Wethersfield, let me tell you what happens in Wethersfield. Every day, 3 minibuses turn up at Wethersfield's gates, take the migrants into Chelmsford, Braintree and Colchester for them to go shopping with what I don't know, because apparently they haven't got any money. Then they pick them up at 5 o'clock and take them back. So you've got these undocumented, some dangerous migrants running around the towns and cities of Essex and getting picked up at the taxpayer's expense. It's not only a risk, but surely all of this is just providing an incentive. We're housing them, we're giving them food, we're giving them mobile phones, we're giving them driving lessons, trampoline lessons in certain parts of the country we hear. If we didn't have incentives, these people would not make the journey from France.
OK, Matthew, look, it's obviously a case of kind of government versus the people, and it was under the Tories as well, but Labour are in charge now. The other terrible look for this is that apparently was the main base for training cadets, and we got, as yet, no replacement for that. So that's the future of the armed forces, and they've waved goodbye to that because they want to put foreign fighting-age men in a military base. I mean, given that everything is kicking off in the world right now, is that not just brain-dead stupid?
Well, I mean, I hope the alternative provision has been made, even if they haven't announced it. I'm sure that they're not going to stop training cadets because of it. Their provision will be made for that, because, as you say, it's essential to have the next generation.
I think they should at least reassure... if I was in comms in government, one of the first things I would have done was say, we need to reassure the public that the cadets have got somewhere to train.
Absolutely, and I would encourage colleagues in government to get that press release, that press release confirming that cadet training is continuing out ASAP. Look, I don't think anybody thinks this is an ideal. I think it is a better situation than the hotels, not least because I think the hotels, which were rather more palatial than the accommodation that's going to be provided for in this or the other camps, arguably was acting as a draw factor, whereas this is a tougher regime. But clearly, the solution to this is to have fewer people coming over the channel, reducing down as close as possible to zero, and those people that do come are processed turned around much quicker. That still isn't happening fast enough.
But Matthew, we spent decades talking about this, and not just this government, but of course the previous government, that we must stop the boats. I mean, I'm bored, as everybody watching this will be, bored listening to people, commentators and politicians saying, we must stop the boats. The only way you do it is to make it very uncomfortable for people to come here.
So I just want to say here, because we're looking at pictures of the actual, barracks barracks, if you like, there's a really important point here, and it's not just about training the next generation of the army, because we always want to be doing that. We know that we are in the most dangerous period since the Second World War. We know that our army has been hollowed out. We know there's a recruitment crisis. We know there's an accommodation crisis. And we should be renovating bases like this to train our soldiers, because we know we are right between a rock and a hard place.
Can you imagine
what
Putin and Xi Jinping think when they see that our British? I mean, that is such a gift
Patrick,
for them.
Here's a reality for you: there are now more illegal migrants in this country than the armed forces number.
It's ridiculous.
So we have more illegal migrants in this country that have invaded this country. That's what they've done, than the entire number of British armed forces.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second.
It's also about general quality of life and peace of mind for actual British citizens, many of whom will be hard-working, tax-paying, law-abiding, who live in places like Crowborough or up in Inverness. I think the other one is, or frankly, anywhere where we've got any of these bases, these hotels. Because, see that story today, a failed asylum seeker from Trinidad has been found, well, he's found guilty previously, was sentenced today to just over 7 years, I think, for rape in Bournemouth. Now, OK, fine, not every single person who's at these hotels or whatever is going to be a rapist or a criminal or anything like that. But now, women and children in that area are going to be more worried than they were before.
And there will be incidents, Patrick. I'm sorry. There have been incidents in the Barbican and at Canary Wharf and, Epping, of course, which kicked off the unrest in the summer before last. I'm afraid there will be offences. There will be offences committed, whether they're sexual or otherwise, as a consequence of these people being gathered into this particular camp.
So I'll let you come back to that, Matthew, but I'll also give you the example of that one in Inverness, because there were apparently serving members of the armed forces who supposedly, when they go off on tours, Germany or different British military bases abroad, or to do exercises, Estonia, etc., right, that they are concerned that what they leave behind, obviously, is their wives and children. And then, whilst they're being told to go and work for the government and the British state abroad, potentially be called to lay down their lives for this great country of ours, what happens? Illegal immigrants are bussed in. Men are bussed in to surround their wives and children. I mean, it's pretty horrific.
I think that's it's a slightly odd situation in terms of having having a sort of shared space with military personnel or their families when their personnel aren't there. I think this needs to be disused army bases. We need to get numbers right down. But I think just in terms of we have to get people out of the hotels, because it's not. There's also an economic impact to the hotels, because you're seeing important resource, an important economic resource for communities across the country being occupied. You can't have the wedding where you want it. You can't have a conference where you want it.
But how much do we think it's costing to rejuvenate and regenerate?
Apparently it is overall cheaper.
Yeah, but how much? It's what, 10 million, 15, 20 million?
Well, but also the government owns the property, so they're not locked into...
They've got to refurbish it.
Yeah, but they're not locked into these contracts. We've seen people making a lot of money out of the...
But we're still locked in. So some of those hotels will now not have migrants in, but the contracts will still be...
I presume they're moving them out as those contracts expire and they're not being renewed.
We're going to